Just right. It's a reminder for me.
It's more for me, yeah. We are not.
It's more for me.
No, I filtered myself ever since my child was 2. Okay, so we're here on Thursday, March 14th, 2024. Happy Pi Day. I have to get a pie later. It's Curriculum and Learning Committee Meeting at the School District of Menominee Falls. There's a possibility that a quorum of the full membership of the Board of Education may be in attendance at board committee meetings, including virtual meetings. There will be no full board action taken at any board committee meeting. Only members of the committee may vote on any item on the agenda. A live broadcast will be streamed on the school district of YouTube page. To watch the recorded meeting, please visit the SDMF YouTube site. We are at the School District of Menominee Falls in the conference room, 334/3345 on Pilgrim Road in Menominee Falls. And the meeting is called to order at 4:01. And it was properly posted.
Yes.
And so we'll move into minutes. Do I have a motion for everybody to get a chance to look at the minutes?
Also motion.
All right, I'll second. All those in favor of minutes approval? Aye. Okay, and then we'll move right into action item. We don't mess around. AP statistics.
Yes.
Textbook adoption.
Yes.
It's very fascinating.
So,
I looked through it all.
We have Janet Holmba here, one of our math curriculum chairs at the high school, to talk to us a little bit about the statistics textbook for the advanced placement course that is due for updating. So thank you for being here, and we'll let you just jump right in. Just tell us a little bit about why we're here and what we're looking at in the new textbook.
Okay, so we currently have the 5th edition of the same book. So the one you're looking at is the 7th, so there's been 2 new editions. We have hard copies of the book, but we also have digital, and we basically had enough digital copies to make it through this year, but we ran out, plus the book is quite old. So what you saw was the new version of it. So the AP exam, every once in a while, they kind of go through and change a little bit, so they did that several years ago. The 6th edition and the 7th one have the updated kind of how they rearranged the course, so that's awesome. This textbook, I decided to stay with it because it's generally, most people think it's the best one. One of the things I love about it is I don't know how much you look through it, but it uses all real data. Every homework problem example is actual real statistics. They footnote it in the back, so I like that. They use it from all different areas. I met with the textbook rep virtually just for her to show me some of the new features that are available in the online version. So I'm very familiar with it since I've been using it for many years. I used it at my previous district as well. There's great new features in the homework as far as multiple choice, different reports and things that I can, give to help students learn better. I'm trying to think of anything else to include.
Just for a reminder for the committee, for an AP class, we have a limited list of recommended textbooks, right? We get 2 within that list.
Yes.
So our past history has been that if we're just renewing that textbook and AP wants the textbook to be within 10 years, generally, we won't go through a whole review process. Now, if we didn't feel like that was a good textbook, then we would open it up and do a more thorough, perhaps pilot and that kind of thing, follow that process. But when we're just, we're happy with the book itself and the updates that are made, we typically just bring it forward for an action item.
So how many copies are we?
So what so sometimes so it's gonna be digital, but sometimes students, it's just nice for them to have a hard copy. So I put 15 hard copies just to have for reference. A lot of times I keep them in the classroom, or a student will keep them at home. But total, it's really 75. It's just the way they write it up. If you purchase a hard copy, you also get a digital, so the rep had to do the 15 hard copy and 15 digital, separate. But it's really total of 75 digital copies that is for 6 years.
And then how many did we have of the last version of the digital copies?
Well, it wasn't, it was, the way they used to do it, because it's so old, is you get copies, and I don't know how many it was for how many years, but you get codes and the code works like 6 times. And so I would pass out the codes, so I have probably 30 codes left, so I don't know, I wasn't here, this is my 3rd year in the district, so I'm not sure how many were originally ordered, so. I did ask the rep because the attendance fluctuates in AP stats, and so 75 should be good each year. She said you guys would know how that works, so like, for example, if we'd have 76 students one year,
Then we typically.
they
just
log in and
analyze
you
it.
get a bill, like, she said you would know how that works, and you're very used to it, so.
Yeah, we'll reach out and we'll add,
Yeah,
purchase an additional license.
yeah,
It's
so
like
I just
any
kinda,
adoption, we would, if we needed
Right.
additional materials, we would replace those.
I think I had just a general question in regards to the AP curriculum. That's like a national curriculum, so we have very limited in the scope of the different books, so we just have to stick with those books, right?
We do,
Because we have
so
to teach to the test.
yes.
And then who, just for my knowledge, who authors the test? Who creates the test? Like, are there certain?
College board.
Yeah, but like certain members, and then you know the names. For example, I know of a curriculum in our school district, and the author of the test wrote one of the books. You know, so like kind of a double thing there. So I just didn't know if you ever knew names for these.
I don't know as far as writing the AP test, I do know that the authors of this textbook are quite active in the AP community and do lots of seminars and
Okay.
things, and they actually have old AP test questions in the book that we use for practice in each chapter,
Okay.
so yeah.
And then, you're saying that this is, considered like the best, I'm guessing we're doing well on our scores then, and that's what we're taking into consideration for the best.
Yes, and like I said, I've taught from this book in Menominee Falls in my previous school district, and generally what I tell the students is obviously they have to do what they need to do in the class, but students who are getting, I feel it's my responsibility, if students are earning an A or B in the class, they should be able to get a 3, 4, or 5 on the exam if I'm preparing them properly. So I kind of gauge that to gauge myself. Now obviously a student's getting a D in the class, just because they're in my class and I'm presenting everything doesn't mean they're gonna get a 3, but if they're earning and doing what they should, and that does correlate. So we get the scores as kind of a delayed, but I always kind of look at that, and I've taught it for many years, so I obviously try to make it better each year and prepare them for that.
Yeah, I did notice that the sample questions in there did seem to align with the skills that they would need to display, so.
Yeah, so but back to, I think, to your original question, there is a set curriculum, there are set textbooks, and in order to call it an AP class in our catalog, we have to authorize or agree that we are teaching this program.
Yeah. Any other questions or anything else you want to share?
Sounds good to me, the book was really good.
I think it is.
Well, some things are coming back
They
to me,
were
but it
very
was
updated on
solid
some
words.
examples and things like that, I
So.
did notice.
No, I mean, I find it fascinating, just to give an example, because today was one of my favorite lessons in AP Stats. So I don't know if you've ever seen the show Mythbusters.
Oh, yeah.
So we showed a clip from the movie the show Mythbusters where they're looking as yawning contagious. Okay, so they do their whole study, they present the results. At the end of the clip, they say their results were statistically significant, yawning is contagious. And we did the math today, and they actually made an incorrect conclusion on the show. It's not statistically significant. So I find that exciting and interesting. But, yes.
Engaging for
That is
students.
and I am one of those that does not yawn. I got a weird skill there.
I'm gonna put that to the
But,
test.
Anyway, we'll talk about that. But
I'm gonna make a motion.
Okay,
I'll second.
and all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so then it is adopted, the new AP stats book.
Thank you.
Awesome,
Thank
thank
you.
you, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yes. Is there any chance I could grab one of those?
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
I don't
I am not
have one.
taking any of them
You
home
guys
to
got the
read,
copies
so-
first.
Want to take them all?
Oh,
Well, I'll take the
copies.
stats ones.
Yeah.
Right, I
Yeah.
can take those, yes.
You want the bag?
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you can take the bag.
Sure. Actually, that
Compliments.
does go back to the high school, so.
Okay,
Oh, there you go.
So as we're preparing for this exam, it'd be nice to have the new version in my hands, maybe I can pull a couple examples before next year.
And I have another one I can run into. Okay. If you need another one. Yeah,
I
it's at home. Thank you, thanks for your presentation. Okay, moving right along. We have the next action item, AP Econ textbook adoption.
Yes, so similarly, we are in the market for an updated AP Economics textbook. So Lindsay Smallwood, one of our social studies curriculum chairs at the high school, is here to kind of walk us through where we are with AP Economics.
Yeah, I think Christina's actually gonna.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay, Maggie, who's the other
Maggie
curriculum
Hango.
chair,
Yes.
is the one that teaches it, and it's basically the same situation, so the same, and Amy jump in if I'm misspeaking on this, but the same textbook, it's just the updated, and they updated the AP Econ test as well, so it reflects the updates in the AP curriculum, so
Yes,
pretty similar.
that is, we are in exactly the same situation of needing just the updated textbook. Again, similar national curriculum process and
And I know Amy and Laura, you guys worked with Maggie on the number for that one.
we did,
Yep.
we did, yes, based on the information that she had and what she needed as far as teacher resources, the AP text and the assessment suite, so all that is in here, it is all here for the total of just over 11,000.
Just a quick note, I saw it here on the invoice, I saw a contact name, Casey Loya.
Yeah, it's just,
Oh, okay,
it
carry over.
a carryover, it takes a
Oh.
while, I get
I'm like,
Casey's mail, I get
oh,
Susie's
okay.
mail, it seems to take
You're like, yeah,
multiple
just leave it.
years for
Yeah.
that to, so I don't, it'll still get to the right place, but
Yeah.
vendors keep their mailing lists for a long time.
We have the right address at least.
I'm
They
sure,
do, they
I'm
do,
sure,
so I
yeah.
get a lot of mail with other people's names on it, but slowly we're making that shift, so.
I just noticed that was just.
Yeah, no, I did too, so we'll make sure that it's probably already updated.
Yeah, I looked through that, I was
Yep, I did too, they look good. Be comprehensive, don't quiz me on anything, I'm just saying.
We are not requiring the AP test.
No.
I'll make a motion.
Alright, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you very much, thank you, Christina.
Okay, so moving along, thank you for that. What are we on now, secondary?
We are
Okay.
on
Okay.
secondary grade 6 through 12 social studies curriculum update. So as you know, we are piloting lots of different resources across ELA and social studies, and every school is impacted in one way or another at this point. Secondary is focused on both social studies and ELA. So we have a group of people here, Lindsay is here, Lynn Grimm, our learning improvement specialist, Jeff Stellenworth from the middle school, I think I got everybody. So they have been working hard on just highlighting new resources, they've piloted multiple things, and so I'll let them kind of update you on where we are. Just as a reminder, we're not at a decision-making point yet, that we will be coming back to you in on the 17th of April.
So is it okay if I school bus report or because Shelley not being here? Is that or not, or do you want to keep it?
No,
that
that's
way?
fine.
Okay.
You're on high school first,
Yeah.
okay. So yes, so any would be helpful tonight, any questions and moving forward, and I'll say this for all the pilots, if there are any questions that you have that you want us to be ready to answer the next time,
Okay.
because we'll come back on the 17th, it would just whether you have those tonight or moving forward.
Okay.
It would be good to,
The next one is, I'm going, April.
so we have two
3rd.
meetings coming up, April 3rd and April 17th. April 17th will be the meeting where we will go through all of the pilots again
Okay.
and do the formal approval. April 3rd will be for all of the other things
Okay.
that we have to do, unless there's something specific related to a pilot that we need to add. But I'm really planning for that meeting to be, because everybody will be finishing up all of their surveys and things.
Yeah,
Planning for the April 3rd meeting to be everything else we need to cover, and
Okay.
the 17th dedicated to finishing up our pilot work.
okay,
So that gives them the maximum amount of time.
Yeah.
While still making sure that we have plenty of time to use our ESSER funds for these
Yeah.
purchases, so.
yeah, when are those up again?
We are supposed to have
This week.
everything spent June 30th.
Okay.
We have a little cushion after that, a short window, to finish up but our goal was to have materials in hand as soon as possible.
Okay.
After our pilots are done. So yeah, that's a whole bunch, so high school.
All right.
I'm just flipping the order a little bit.
That's okay.
Shelley Wolf and I work really closely together and it's very similar, so.
Okay.
All right, so if the next slide, so for the goals, again, just a reminder that we are mid-pilot right now. We're really more like about maybe 3/5 of the way done. So I'll be sharing the results around the McGraw-Hill, which was the first part of the social studies pilot at the high school, and then Savas is our second half that I'll be doing, we'll be doing that later. So, there is a timeline where that just reminds you of when we came before. We had less of that filled in, and we have scooted further along here where, again, we did 3 weeks with the McGraw-Hill, and we are now currently in the 3 weeks of the Savas portion of the pilot. So here's the dates, just there is a little bit of overlap between the two pilots, and that is because of the 4 different areas between US history, world, government, and econ. Every department, each of them had a slightly different ending date for one unit and start of another, so that's where that little bit of overlap lies. So what I'm gonna be sharing with you is, at the beginning of this pilot, we did a survey to teachers and families about what was most important to them in a resource. And we used that when we had all the vendors come in, and we used those questions. And so those same questions now have been used throughout how we're analyzing the feedback around it. So we've been doing a teacher survey. Each week the teachers fill out a survey on McGraw-Hill as they were doing the pilot. And so there's 32 responses for this. And then the next slide shows you that these are the, that's where I keep up with my notes here. These are the 8 top priorities that the questions revolved around. And so we took the feedback from that, and I'm just gonna show 2 examples for each survey. I originally had them all in there and it would have been like way too long. But if you go to the next slide, you can see this is an example, and I'm gonna stick with the inquiry base through all the different surveys. You can kind of see the difference between the teachers, the parents, and the students, and how their thoughts are around the McGraw-Hill. So with most of the different graphs, you'll see McGraw-Hill kind of tended to fall into that middle. We had a choice between 0, 1, 2. It really is falling into that middle ranking. So we also did anecdotal feedback where I went in and I observed in each of the classrooms, and then I would ask I'd choose certain students just randomly and say, what are your thoughts, pros and cons, and we kept track of that, and then we analyzed the feedback from that. As a pilot team, we met and we went over all of this data together, and then for each of the surveys and the anecdotal data, we came up with kind of a summary statement. So, for the teachers, if you go one more.
Okay.
Yep. So what is the Yep, there you go, thank you.
Okay.
What is the overall teacher feedback? So the anecdotal, I'll just throw out a few things that kind of jumped out. With the teachers, they said that required a lot of adjustments to keep the on what was there. They need a lot of teacher input and adjustments to keep that high, to keep engagement. There wasn't as much scaffolding of the text to help students really access and understand the material, and they felt like there was a little bit lack of some multimedia elements. So their overall summary, though, was that McGraw-Hill needs a lot of teacher-created support. It doesn't seem to have as deep of thinking questions that they would like to see, and it's a basic text resource. So that was kind of their outcome. And now you can compare that to the parent survey, and we were kind of excited. We had 31 responses, which for the high school is pretty high. And again, these questions came from the parents' feedback early on in the process of what they said was important. So then they have 7 questions that they answered to. And here's 2 different examples. And you can see in the parents, they're kind of trending a little bit more to the left. And so like this next one is, how would you rate, if you slide one more, it says, how would you rate it overall? And you can see it's really kind of leaning toward the 0 and the 1.
4 was your high score, right?
Yes, for them 4 was the high score. This was a 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4.
Okay.
And then again, the parents were allowed to put in comments, and so we did analyze the comments and look for themes in those. And the biggest theme was that they felt it was somewhat ineffective for high engagement and it was challenging for their students. There was a few that parents were not as excited that their child was in a pilot, things like that, so. But the summary for this one basically was that in the survey, the parents shared that they thought there was a lack of student engagement. However, they also did show an appreciation for having a digital resource to use at home. That question scored higher, that they appreciated the digital resource. So, and then that leads us to the student survey, and you can see 355 because they took it in class. So, but again, we also analyzed that anecdotal feedback from when I asked, what they thought was strong about it, what they thought they didn't prefer as much. And so the student questions here, these were again based off of that original feedback from the parents and the teachers about what was important. So here again, I'm sticking with that inquiry, so you can see here where the students kind of falls around that 1 or 2, kind of that middle of the road again. And then their overall program, it was like it kind of trended toward the lower end of the survey questions. So what was interesting was when I would ask the students during the observations, it was a blend of some kids really liked the traditional using the hard copy textbook, and other kids said, I really like being able to have it digitally, and it was pretty mixed. So they liked the option to choose, and in class, most of the teachers allowed them to use whichever one they felt more comfortable with. Certain activities would lend itself to if they were writing onto, something on the digital resource that was being sent to a teacher, or if they were doing, something with a team and they wanted the book in front of them. So they really did, though, do it very open for the child's preference. There was some mixed opinions about, there's a part in McGraw-Hill called Smart Book, and where they do some reading and then they have to answer 3 formative questions. And the student feedback was they didn't like that if they got one wrong, they were already kind of at a 67% and they had to redo it. And they felt like they should be able to just go back and learn that one piece instead of having to redo the whole thing, but that's the way the system worked. It was the summary from the students, so from the survey and from the anecdotal themes, was that the student survey scores showed an overall evenly distribution between the mid to lower end. And what was interesting is the students' feedback really kind of mimicked and was similar to the teacher feedback that it was a basic text resource. So I put a recap in there just so there's kind of the recap summary of each of those. And just to throw in a few more things that it does offer, the teachers did share it also, it does offer writing opportunities, but again, they didn't feel that some of the questions were as in-depth for comprehension as they would have hoped, and that it didn't have as much scaffolding and supports for the complex text. There was an inquiry section, but the teacher said it's a section, it's not embedded throughout the whole resource, and they had some concerns that might not be enough to support throughout the entire school year, where it was maybe strong enough for one unit, but that they didn't know that would be enough to sustain throughout the year. So the teachers in the summary shared that they are committed to the process and consistency through collecting the data on the second half. And what's really fun is that the students are really appreciating that their voices are being heard, and they've shared that with their teachers. Like, they feel very empowered by this. And so I have, on Tuesday, I finished up my observations for the Sabbath, so just to kind of give you where it seems to be trending. Now we're waiting, the surveys are finishing up this week for the parents and the students, and then the teachers' surveys will finish up next week, and then we'll analyze it as deep as we did this. But in my observational data, out of 29 students, 25 said they liked Sabbath better, and 4 said they liked the McGraw-Hill better. And so I know, did Maggie swipe in? She did a little plus delta with her class to kind of dig into, and I know the teachers are all doing that, like at the end, they're doing like a plus delta with the students. And my understanding is that one of the pieces about the Sabbath that they're struggling with is that there's a few more clicks to get to the parts, but all the other pieces to it are actually they're finding to be like stronger as far as well, I don't want to jump ahead, but
Sure.
Right now that's where it seems to be trending. So and I think we go to the next steps, oops, sorry, back, there we go. So we will again be finishing up the McGraw-Hill pilot by spring break. Then we will be analyzing the data as a pilot team and then bringing the final recommendations to you on April 17th.
Any questions?
The only actually question I have, you might not even know the answer to right now, but you had mentioned like the students like the option of having like that hard copy and digital. Is there a difference between McGraw-Hill and Savvis as far as what they offer when we purchase? Are they gonna have a hard copy and a digital option for both? Is there a difference between the curriculum that would be a huge
Difference
pro or
that way?
con that way?
They
or-
both offer both of those,
Okay.
and that is where, so far, the feedback on Savvis has been that the digital portion as far as the graphs and the maps and like a little video clip are just like at a higher level, and this is coming from the kids.
Yeah,
they-
sure.
And like one of the
Interactive,
students,
and they spend a lot of time online.
very interactive,
So-
yes, and one of the students, he said it's easier for me to comprehend what I'm reading, and I said, they're just so smart, they just impress me, the students. And so I said, can you dig deeper into what it is about the difference between the two? And he said, well, when I'm reading and I don't know a vocabulary term, it has a better explanation and a section for the vocabulary that I can go refer to, and that helps me understand what I'm reading. I don't know if you guys wanna add anything to that, of what the students are seeing with Savvis versus the McGraw-Hill, just observationally.
I would say observationally, the Savvis questions are much higher level thinking, and they are like, the answer's not in the textbook. I'm like, yep, it says infer. So I like that it's not straight there for them, and so it's making them really think about the bigger picture of how these concepts apply. So I'm really impressed with that aspect of it.
Okay.
In terms of the text itself, so the online platforms, McGraw-Hill, students are able to adjust the Lexile level. There's 2 different Lexile levels available to them, so that's convenient. Savvis approaches it a little bit differently. They said during their sales pitch that they don't want to lower the level, they want to invite students into the higher level. And so what they provide is a leveled lesson summary, and basically they condense the lesson into, like, so instead of like a 6 or 7 page chapter, they narrow it down to like 2 to 3 pages. And I've tested that out, and it's really nice when you have time constraints too, to be able to provide a text that covers everything still without just like nitpicking different sections. And so that's a big difference that I've noticed too about just the way they approach the structure of the text.
I think we had a conversation about McGraw-Hill having that option to customize. Does Savvis have that also too?
I think that was elementary,
That was just an element.
yeah, that was an elementary piece.
And we wouldn't have that opportunity.
At secondary, no, I think if I'm remembering correctly,
I remember
That
having a
was,
conversation about that.
yeah, that was a kind of a condensed piece. And there was also a Wisconsin piece, or Wisconsin
there's a
history at fourth
Wisconsin,
grade, yeah. So that wouldn't apply at the high school level or the secondary level, really.
All right.
Thank you.
That was a good summary. Yeah, thank you.
And I just have to
We'll
give
stay
a
tuned.
little shout out to the pilot team, they are doing amazing work, and I know this is, you know,
Yeah.
puts it above and beyond, and that they're learning all these both different, you know, pieces, and we're gonna maybe go with one, so I just wanna give them a little shout out.
The one
there.
question I do actually have a little question. You know, change is always difficult, right?
Yeah.
You know, change is not fun, even though people think it's good, but sometimes it's bad, right? You know, so do you kind of look at those outliers, like high scores versus low, and kind of like concentrate more on the middle scores? Or, you know,
I
like
think
the student surveys?
Yeah, we're really being open to the process, so
Yeah.
this is the first time we've done it, and like, this is my first year doing it this depth with them, but
Yeah.
and that's where, when we got done analyzing the McGraw-Hill, and I said, what do you want your final statement to be, and to the board, and they said, we want them to know we're committed to the process and really going with the feedback from all those avenues. And
Okay.
one of my favorite pieces though is that when I talk to the students, they get a little grin on their face and they say, both of them, but more Savvis is making us read more. We don't like it as much, but we know it's good for us.
Definitely.
And they say it with a little, you know, that little
Okay, yeah,
smirk,
yeah.
so
That's
that's my
hilarious.
favorite part, is just their feedback has really been like amazing, so.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Lynn, you do a really good job of drawing it out of them and asking those questions.
Yeah.
I definitely have heard from all of our students that they're reading more with these pilots, which
Yeah.
just makes my heart happy. So
Right.
I don't know how they feel about it.
Plus I'm ready for college.
100%.
Yeah. Important. Well, thank you, appreciate that,
Yes.
Jay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, let's move on
Yep.
to 6-8, where Jeff Stallwork is here
So,
as our middle school chair.
yep, Shelley Wolf would be here normally, in Lynn's role. She's got volleyball tonight, her last time with the, 7th graders tonight, so I'm just filling in. But she did put the PowerPoint together for us and everything, so she deserves credit for that. Goals for the update again, is just review the process with you. These are the same intro slides that were with the high school ones, so just we can go through a little quicker on this. Same road that we've gone down, we went through a selection process in December of sources and we narrowed it down to the 2 we were going to use. Collected those in January. We began the first pilot, which for us was McGraw-Hill, at the end of January. The switch over for that occurred mid-February. We are now using National Geographic. Most 6th, 7th, and 8th grade are ending that this week because of how 8th, 6th grade's unit is. They actually took a few more days with each, so they're finishing up early next week. So the whole process with both books will be done starting next week. So there's, I actually went right into that next piece. Those are the 2 companies that we're using right there. Today's focus will be largely on McGraw-Hill. We did do the survey on National Geo with our 8th grade, and we're in the process of rounding up the 7th grade scores. The 6th grade surveys for those will be next week, and the parent surveys will be going out at the end of this week. So until we have all that data back, we have anecdotal evidence, just like you guys did, on National Geo, but we don't have the final evidence from parents and students, so we'll bring that back with us. So Shelley has them in the format just with raw numbers here, and these were the survey questions that were given to, first of all, teacher feedback. Similar to the high school, we came up with a list of consistent questions that we wanted to be able to have on a weekly basis to kind of guide us along as to how these resources were working for us. And the score on this is either a 0, a 1, or a 2. Most of the scores were between 1 and 2, so that certainly means there was not too much that was really bad. I will point out the one that was clearly lower, you'll see it in a minute here. But the inquiry base to both of these, there was the ability to have questions, inquiry-based questions, inquiry-based resources, small resources that they can use and be able to work with. A lot more reading in these books, which is nice. So that shows up in both the questions about reading and inquiry. Scaffolding is there. We thought if the teacher designs the activity that way, there's ways of designing that with the way the lesson's set up for most lessons. Next slide. The area where they were the weakest, in our opinion, was in the digital components. They were clunky. They were not user-friendly. We got that from students, we got that from staff, even worse than students. The students weren't overly filled with it. On the staff feedback, they were difficult to use. And there's always gonna be a little bit of a learning curve with anything that's new. But this was beyond learning curve. There was difficult to maneuver your way around. So, in the smart books, again, some of the same problems the high school mentioned. Students getting one question wrong, getting shuttled back to an entire section that's 7 pages long. It doesn't even take you back to the section that the question was from. It's like, oh, go ahead and read these 7 pages again. So they weren't very smart. And we brought that up with the coordinator too, and they're like, yeah, we're working on that, but you know, that's a concern. I can see where a student get very frustrated with that after a while. So that would be the only piece was the digital component that I would be highly concerned about. The rest of it actually scored fairly well. If we go a little bit from that, that's the summary of the teacher feedback that we got from the weekly reports from teachers. Many of the text features were nice. You could do a lot with what they had in there for options within the lesson to meet different learning levels. Basic teaching options to choose from were good. We found the pedagogy outdated though. I don't know how many times I saw in the book, have the students read this and read a 1-page essay. Have the students read this and read a 1-page essay. Well, you can only write so many 1-page essays in the course of a year. And the authors in this book were the same authors I had in my textbook in 1996 when I started in the district. 2 of the same authors of the 5 were there. Now that in of itself is not a problem, but when you look at some of the skills and activities they had, it's pretty clear that some of what they have students doing for engagement hadn't gotten updated at the level you'd expect. Some of it's there, but some of it was not. So that was concerning to me. I actually pulled out an old teacher book from the 2002, the second of the books I've used in my career, and I said, wow, this hasn't changed one bit. And that would be a concern to me. Some things were new, but I would have expected more of an updated textbook from a large company like that. So that's on the teacher side. Parent survey, we got one response. That was it. So 30 less than the high school. It did go out to parents in the newsletter. I'm not totally shocked that it's a low number. Our parents kind of trust us in what we're doing. And as I told my students in their own book, I have a student at the high school, he goes, you're gonna fill out the parent survey. I said, I haven't seen your book. I'm not gonna fill out a survey just because you're telling me what you want. You do have a student survey to fill out. As a teacher, I'll fill it out if I read it. So our middle school's English one, I filled it out, but without seeing the high school one, I'm not filling out a survey for you. You offer the feedback. So I do wonder how many parents actually had a chance to look at the book and simply said the same thing. If I haven't seen your book, I'm not gonna fill out a survey. You wouldn't fill out the student survey. But the one parent who did fill it out, here you go. Those were the questions that were asked. Here's the response. The highest score they give anything on those questions was a 2. Their only response back was not good for individuals requiring special help. I can't tell from that if they mean student with special needs or if you just need help at home and are having a hard time accessing the online books. So it's a little hard to tell just from the answer. Either one of those is possible. Student responses, much better, 339 responses.
We had a captive audience.
We did. They sort of didn't have choice. We asked them to take the survey. So again, these are the responses. Theirs is on a 1, 2, 3, 4 scale. So you got to adjust a little bit for what you're looking at in the teacher one. 4 could be the high. The ability to access the resources they put as relatively high. Getting into the book through Canva, I used Canva today, clever, thank you, was not difficult. And I'll just say for the book to add to the high school's comment, it was heartening to hear students say they like the hard copy of a book. They're getting tired of using computers all the time in every class. They said that for both books. They say it more for the other book we're using now, National Geo one is much more user appealing. But they said it for both books. It's nice to have a hard copy to go into. So that might feed into there too in terms of if they saw access as being that. We did have them at the tables, classroom set every day for them to be able to have the choice as much as we could, unless we were doing an online only activity. Again, some of the questions and data you can see right there, the inquiry-based, there were 2 direct inquiry-based activities that they did where they were asked to work with small primary source documents and then be able to analyze that and to synthesize it together. The activities, the documents themselves were good. You would have to jazz this up as a teacher if you use this throughout the year because they didn't change the format of what you did with it afterwards. Then we used 2 of them in 3 weeks, and even on the second time they threw like, oh, this looks just like the one we did 3 weeks ago. And so as we're looking through the book, like, yeah, this is gonna be the same every single time. We're gonna have to use the sources, but maybe think of a different way at the end to pull together the information, or they're gonna get tired of it real quick if you did. But they had good primary sources that you could use, without doubt. Overall program got a 2.47. Common student reaction. They said they found it easy to use and it provided opportunities for reading and writing, and they did. We were very purposeful in our use of that for them to make sure that we got feedback on how that worked with them. What's funny is the interactive technology component scored high. I'm gonna assume that's the 6th graders that scored, because I can tell you in the anecdotal plus delta we did afterwards, and the 6th graders have no use of books coming from the elementary or online. So this might have been like, wow, we have this too. They don't have a resource right now in 6th grade. The 8th graders, when we did plus delta feedback, they took no shortage of opportunity to rip the online book. They were not impressed with it at all. Even when we tried a couple different times to reteach it to them, it was clunky. They did say though that the accessing it was fine. So if you had it at home and you just needed to get it because you're out sick for a few days, it would work. If you're gonna use it in the classroom, I'd much prefer to use a hard copy book probably. Alright, that's the student summary. So next steps, we are just finishing up National Geo. That survey will go out to parents, I believe, this weekend. In the next newsletter. The student surveys, 8th grade are done, 7th grade's doing theirs this week, 6th grade may still be taking place early next week. That data will be accumulated. We're meeting with Shelley next Wednesday to talk about that a little bit, and then obviously have that put together for you guys at the April meeting on the 17th. Anecdotally, if you want the little preview, again, our teachers are trying to be honest to the process, but I did ask my 8th graders now that we're totally done with each book. I said, okay, you took the survey online, everything else, I held up a copy of each to remind them. I said, if you had to vote today, which book would you want to use next year? I have 4 classes, roughly 30 people in each class. I had 1 student pick McGraw-Hill. I had 6 students say it's a horse piece. Every other student out of 120 some students said National Geo. It's just, for a lot of reasons, which I'll get into the National Geo, we'll see what comes back in the actual data that they say, but it's much more user-friendly and appealing to the eye and easier for kids to use, I think. We'll see if that comes out. I haven't seen the exact words that students have put into this, that Shelley have for the slides, but when we did our Plus Delta, they were not afraid to offer up, again, suggestions along the way. They were very good and kind of excited to be able to offer. I think they like the idea of knowing they're influencing the group behind them. And maybe the high school is enjoying that too, knowing that they're influencing a group that's coming up as well. So I will say that the kids were excited about something new and different, and I think we were as well. So it's a grueling process. We have 1 middle school teacher in 6th grade who teaches 2 social studies and 2 English, and she was piloting both. We told her, you don't have to pick one or the other. This is a big call, but she did both. So everybody's excited about what they're about to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so really going into spring break, they're into spring break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Questions at all you have for our team at all?
Oh, it's good to get all that, information, so it's great.
Yeah. It just seems interesting that, I know that you guys had kind of gone through a process even to choose these 2 pilots, and then to have like such a difference in the response from the 2 coming from the same initial scores. It's just interesting. So I guess we'll look forward to the next meeting and putting it all together.
It's very interesting that once you really get into it,
Right.
what you can see.
Mhm.
That is why we go through the process.
Exactly, which is great. So thank you for all the extra work on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, social studies folks. Appreciate your time and dedication, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Don't forget to come back tomorrow.
Alrighty, moving on to secondary, is it right, am I right, ELA curriculum
Yes.
pilot?
So sticking with the high school and middle school, but shifting to our ELA, English Language Arts pilots at secondary. We've got Lindsay Coulter, our high school ELA chair. We've got Heidi Spangola, our secondary literacy coordinator, and Wendy Kirk, our middle school ELA chair, here to give us an update on what they've been doing with our ELA pilots.
So our goals of our presentation today will just give you a kind of review of where we are in the process to date, and then give you an update on 6-8, so what's happening at North, an update on 9-12, what's happening at the high school, and then what are our next steps. So moving forward, our review up till now, similarly to the social studies pilots, last time we were with you, we had just kind of finished our vendor previews, and we had the opportunity to narrow our list down for each site. And since that time, we've had the opportunity to then have some training for those pilots and then implementing those pilot resources. Different than social studies, rather than having our resources run consecutively, our resources are running concurrently with different teachers teaching different resources at the same time. That's due to the length of the units. So whereas the high school social studies team and the middle school social studies team, all of the teachers have experience with the resources, here our pilot teachers have deep knowledge of one resource, so that they had the opportunity to get through an entire unit in depth to provide that feedback. And then we are having collaborative discussions as grade levels to have that comparative feedback process. Those pilots are wrapping up, some this week, some into next week, just based upon the little bit of variance in those unit lengths. And then again, just like social studies, bringing our final recommendation back to you in April. So starting with 6-8 ELA, as a reminder, we piloted 3 resources at the middle school level. Those 3 resources were Amplify ELA, HMH into Literature, and Savvis My Perspectives. I know you guys have had a lot of curricular resources to look through, so I'm gonna give you just a little overview of each of them on the following slide, just to bring them back up to memory. So Amplify ELA is a kind of technology-based ELA platform that has learning modules. It has opportunities for reading and writing, and each module or unit is based on a discrete skill of knowledge. For example, the Titanic might be a knowledge-based unit. Brain science might be a knowledge-based unit. So those are all built in there. And then they have a daily vocabulary practice app as another component of their resource. HMH into Literature. This is a resource that focuses on a short text each week. Students have opportunities to read and write daily with that text, and that platform is very much guided into helping students annotate text along the way to answer an essential question. And then the final pilot resource at the middle school level is the Savvis My Perspectives. That resource has a blend of technology and hard copy resources. It is also based on an essential question per unit. But this one has more opportunities for daily reading and writing, as well as a little bit more of the speaking and listening components. The important thing that I'll bring up with Savvis is this is their 2025 version. It's their new version. And so we are piloting something that's kind of in its brand new stage. So some of the technology pieces of Savvis are still in like beta, and so some of them have been a little glitchy, but based upon what social studies has seen with Savvis, as well as what other districts who have Savvis in its older version, we know that platform will be good. We just know right now we couldn't see it in its full capacity since it's still in that beta stage. So where are we at with these? So right now, our teachers are filling out weekly feedback surveys, and these are some of the trends that are coming up in those weekly feedback surveys to date. We know that our students in Amplify ELA are very engaged in the topic, and that we know that the lessons all build upon each other. It is very easy to set up and for students to access, and it's got great explicit comprehension instruction within it. Similarly, My Perspectives, students are also very engaged in the topic. The lessons are sequential, but there are a few more opportunities for differentiation or modification. So if you maybe didn't fully grasp something one day, the teacher has a little more flexibility to differentiate, change it, or update it, review it for the next day for the students. There's a lot of built-in conceptual vocabulary. Whereas some of the other resources have a word that's specific to one piece of text, the vocabulary that's in My Perspectives is overarching to what the essential question is. So you're getting more broad words, things like, I'm not even come up with a good one now that I'm on the spot. But they're ones that go to the overarching topic that all come together rather than being just in this one text this one time and never seeing it again. So it's leading students to be able to use that vocabulary in discussion. And there's a lot of variety of text types. HMH, the students again are engaged in the topic, but the lessons have a very repetitive format. What you do each day is pretty much what you do each day. There's not a lot of variation. There's a heavy focus on the annotating of the text, and there's some variety of that genre type again. So there is some similarity between those based upon that feedback. When we think about our student feedback, so our student feedback surveys are out this week. Those will be wrapping up tomorrow. So then we'll have more hard data to share with you for the next meeting. Anecdotally, we've had the opportunity to go in and have observations and then talk to the students. What are you liking? What are you disliking? All of those things. So this is the anecdotal feedback students are sharing. For Amplify ELA, the students were initially super excited, super engaged. But now they're at a point where they're feeling like, I've read this article 3-4 times over, we've been using it for 4 weeks, I'm kind of done with it, I'm ready to move on to something new. They're just kind of feeling like it's a little repetitive. The students do enjoy having the opportunity to compose on the computer versus having to handwrite things out. And then that vocabulary app, which is kind of like their warm-up routine, they're really kind of 50-50 on that. 50% of the kids thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. They loved it. They thought it was great. It's kind of a gamified app. The other 50% are kind of like, don't really love it. I do it because we need to, but it's not my most favorite thing. In My Perspectives, the students shared that the topic and the variety of text is good. Whereas Amplify ELA has roughly 3-ish texts that the students are primarily circulating around. My Perspectives has more about 6, 7 texts that the students are circulating around, so they're just having more opportunities to see different texts. Funny enough, the students are really enjoying having a workbook. They like having this hard copy workbook that's there. They do keep it in the classroom. They aren't required to carry it with them, and I bring that up for when we get to the high school. So that is something though that they do enjoy. There's also a large small group component, and many of the students find that small group component to be really nice. They enjoy having that opportunity to collaborate with their peers. And then some of the students did share that they felt like sometimes the lessons could be a little fast at times, like we weren't really all the way through it and we're done and we're moving on to the next thing. So, but again, that's kind of a learning curve piece. Into literature, just like My Perspectives, the students enjoyed having that workbook again. They liked having that hard copy, knowing what was coming next, but they really felt the routine is just too repetitive. Just kind of like, well, I'm gonna read this and I'm gonna annotate it. I'm gonna read it and I'm gonna annotate it. And they're just kind of done with that repetitive routine. They also share that the questions on the tests following those readings are confusing. They don't seem to totally align with what they were taught. Teachers have also noticed that similar pattern, and just like in Amplify, they like having the opportunity to compose on the computer for those pieces. We've also then, as part of those observations, just what have we noticed when we're in there seeing those things. In Amplify ELA, when we go into the classrooms, you will see most of the students are on their devices at least 90% of the time or more, with that computer screen up in front of them. The students are much more independent. When you are in there observing it, it often looks like the teacher is talking, giving the directions, guiding the students through a process, and then the students are more independent in completing that on their devices and kind of working through those steps on the device. And the teacher has to basically carry their laptop around to teach Amplify ELA. Because the whole platform is digital, in order to get through the different activities, you have to be able to click through everything. So you either have to sit at your desk to be able to click through everything, or you have to carry your computer around in tablet mode to be able to click through everything. So it's just a quite different approach to being constrained to that area and constrained to your technology than our previous practice had been. In My Perspectives, you would see a lot of students were talking about text with their peers. So you see a lot of student-to-student interaction within that resource, times to turn and talk, small group work, partner work. The teacher definitely leads the beginning of the lesson, but then the teacher kind of becomes a facilitator who's really kind of bouncing around, asking some guiding questions and kind of guiding that process along the way. The students, while in Amplify ELA, they are engaged in that they're completing the task. It's pretty quiet. Whereas in My Perspectives, there's like a nice hum going on amongst the classroom, so they're much more actively engaged on the topic versus just compliantly engaged. And the students often would refer back to their workbook for discussions. They're turning back, they're using that resource for them as they're completing their parts. So it's nice that they have that tool in front of them. Into Literature, the students are in their workbook regularly. That's really kind of the best way to carry out that program. This is similar to Amplify ELA, where the teacher is mainly leading it out by the whole group, and then the students are kind of engaging, but rather than on the computer, in their workbook. There's less student-to-student interaction than there would be in My Perspectives when you're in there watching. And similarly, the students are kind of compliantly engaged. They're doing the things in their textbook, but it's pretty quiet. There's not that hum and that quiet talk with their peers going on. So, based upon all of that, right now, our team, we know that we feel like HMH is not the best fit. We feel like Into Literature right now is not the best fit. The students are not super intrigued with the routine. They're not super intrigued overall with just the kind of format of that resource. And so that one is really kind of, I guess I'm gonna say, falling to the bottom out of the 3 for North. The 2 that are rising to the top then are Amplify ELA and My Perspectives. They are very different programs. They have a lot of similarities, but a lot of key differences. One of the things that we're trying to kind of tease out and talk through is that approach of screen time. Is that how much do we want of that? You kind of heard social studies say the kids are excited to not be on their screens as much and have that opportunity to be in the book and collaborate. So that's something we're trying to take into consideration in those pieces. So kind of ongoing conversations there. I talked a lot. Wendy, do you have anything to add for the high school, for the middle school?
I piloted My Perspectives. Do you have any questions, I guess, before I say a little bit?
Just need your feedback.
I
I think the program is set up in a unique way. It starts with group instruction, where you're reading basically everything together, and then it goes to peer learning. So this is like a few weeks. Most of the units are about 9 weeks, so about a quarter long. So we start with the teacher-led group instruction, and we have peer group learning. So kids are in groups, they are reading together, they're doing tasks together, and you could arrange it really in any way you'd like, but I found the kids really enjoyed working together. I did not let them select their own groups, which they were sad about, but I think it worked really well in asking them their feedback. They enjoy working with peers. They get ideas from one another, things they hadn't considered before. And then it moves to independent learning, and it's a very small portion. It took 2 days, and it might be a little bit different in other units. And we talked about it, and some of them like that chance to work independently, not have to talk to other people about what their opinion is before they come up with a group response. But I would say overall, the kids are extremely engaged in what we're doing. We're doing a unit on should we make a home in space? And the entire reason we chose to pilot that unit was because it's writing focuses argumentative writing. Most of the units, the focus is the writing, or I should say, the writing is what leads kind of the unit. So they've had multiple opportunities to do this type of writing. We're like on our third essay for our unit assessment, and I think kids feel really confident about what they have to do because we've done this, not the same topic, but a similar format a couple of times. There's also a lot of room for practicing speaking and doing listening. It's a lot of peer-to-peer, but we've also had a debate, so it's been a variety of things. But I think its biggest strength is really the text types. We started by watching a NASA video. That was amazing. Then we read an argumentative essay about why humans shouldn't go to space. So really different than the video we watched. Then we dove into some Ray Bradbury science fiction, Dark They Were and Goldeneye. I don't know if you know the story, but it's fantastic. And then we compared it to the radio version that was made in the 1980s. And the kids, and you were there that day, we listened to it and they were very engaged.
It was really good. It was really good.
To more science feature writing, more argumentative texts.
Pictures. Or like
Oh, there was also an artwork gallery that we looked at, and I thought, oh, this is not gonna go well, like 7th graders are not going to enjoy it. And they did. So it has been surprising with how interested they are in the variety of texts. So I've been really pleased with how it's going.
So the pilot program here in the middle school is just one unit and you dive into that unit. Did you get a chance to actually look at the time curriculum?
I have, not in depth, but it contains 5 units, which is more than we could actually teach in a year. Because each unit is about 9 weeks.
So what's your thought on like the quality of the content?
Oh, I think it's very strong. I think the quality is very strong. I think it also allows teachers some autonomy to kind of pick and choose. You cannot do everything in this book. There's just way too much. But I think we see a lot of science reading elements aligned in this book. And they do provide some extra resources if students are struggling. I found those resources actually are really good for teaching some of the concepts. So in the online version, we haven't had a lot of luck with because it's just not updated enough, but we've been able to work around it. And kids that like doing like textbook work, they can write in their workbook, they can annotate directly on the page. And inserting a lot of different instructional activities that aren't necessarily indicated to do in the book, but taking the content and just using your sort of, I'm a teacher, my job is to make it to help kids understand. So using a variety of instructional strategies, it lends itself to that.
Thank you.
Just to piggyback off of that, we had the opportunity to have special education teachers go in and see each of the curriculums. Our EL staff has also had opportunity to go in and see each of the curriculums at the middle school level. And then we have also had the opportunity for our middle school and high school, some of our teachers to go in and see the other pilots in action, which has been really a great opportunity so that even though they're teaching one, they're having the opportunity to see what another one looks like. Our special education staff shared that they felt that my perspectives, they called it, had multiple access points for differentiating and supporting things for students that have IEP goals. So they felt that there were different points in there that they could get in to support students with those needs. And our EL teacher felt that My Perspectives did a very nice job of supporting kind of the overall oral language goals that students that have those English proficiency plans would need. So she felt that the level of language support was very strong in those speaking and listening components. So moving forward to the high school here, and then we can always reflect back if there are more questions. The high school piloted 2 resources. The 2 that the high school chose were McGraw-Hill Study Sync and Savvis My Perspectives. So Savvis being the resource that was at both the middle school and the high school. Just to give you a reminder of what a few of those components are in each of those again. Study Sync is really a technology-based learning module type program, somewhat similar to Amplify, that many of the things are technology-based. There are theme-based units as well as novel-based units. And this resource really has the ability to kind of, for the teacher to kind of pick and choose which components and which modules they want the learners to have. So there might be 6 overall theme units, and then there might be 4 overall novel units. And so teachers can kind of pick and choose within that which ones they would be doing. And then similarly, just to My Perspectives at the middle school, My Perspectives at the high school has that blend of technology and hard copy resources again, still grounded in an essential question, has that daily reading and writing, but has the heavy opportunities for speaking and listening within group work. So where are we with our teacher feedback? With Study Sync, the students are less engaged in the topic and the text overall is a common theme we're seeing across the 3 piloting grade levels. The explicit instruction isn't super robust. Kind of tells you what the topic is, but doesn't give a lot of that explicitness to support how to teach that topic, so just not super robust in that way. Just similarly to Amplify, the students are on their technology at about 90% of the lesson. So there's just a heavy reliance on that platform. And there's less scaffolding of student learning. It primarily goes from the whole group to the independent work. There's less of that small group component is what our teachers are saying. In My Perspective, students seem to enjoy the variety of text types and pieces. We do feel in comparison to Study Sync, there's more robust explicit comprehension instruction. So there's more meat there that the teachers can latch onto to know what to teach and how to teach it. There's also scaffolded writing processes throughout the unit. So it's really taking the students through the writing process several times throughout the course of the unit. So much more scaffolded and explicit how to do that. And there is a higher level of in-class peer-to-peer discussion overall with that collaboration. So just having those opportunities to turn and talk in that student-to-student collaboration again. The anecdotal student feedback, this has some similarities to social studies. Students shared that they felt this was more reading than they had been doing in the past. And again, they kind of say it with a smirk on their face of like, yep, I'm having to read more, which is just, a little bit of interesting feedback there. But in Study Sync, they really were not interested in the pieces. They kind of felt that the texts they were reading were boring. They just didn't have a lot of connection to them. They felt the computer navigation was easy and user-friendly, but they felt it was too much computer work. Like, we're just on this all the time. There wasn't really that blend. And they did share that oftentimes they really had to stop and think a lot about each question. And when I kind of dug into that, it seems like it's not because they're asking them a higher level thinking skill. It seems like sometimes it's because the question isn't quite clear with what they're reading. And there were times that even like as adults, we read the question and tried to go back and figure it out, and we really struggled ourselves. So there just seemed to be a little bit of lack of clarity and a lot of thinking that had to go into figuring out some of those questions there. In My Perspectives, they had that workbook again, and the teachers were not all keeping the workbooks in their classrooms like we did at the middle school. Their biggest complaint is while they like the workbook, they do not like having to carry it around because oftentimes they're not going to their lockers on a regular basis. And so having to carry around this pretty thick workbook was just not what they wanted to do. They did say everything is really easy to find, that the workbook is really user-friendly. They could easily flip to where they needed to be, find what they needed to find, which they were very happy with. And they liked the small group work. The teachers were a little apprehensive about how that was going to go, but the students really enjoyed that opportunity to collaborate with one another. The students shared that they felt there were a lot of good articles and pieces to read. There was one very honest student that was like, I hated what we read last week, but I was only gonna do it for like 3 days and then I'd get a new piece to read. So I liked that. I liked that I wasn't stuck in something for a quarter or a week or 2 weeks that maybe I didn't like. It's kind of 3 days and I get to try something new, which is great. And that they felt that working with a group helped them to better understand the concept. So that was great that collaborative learning led to a deeper level of understanding. Observationally, when we were in the rooms, just what did we see? What did instruction look like? In StudySync, the lesson flowed from a pretty high level of teacher talk straight to a pretty high level of student independent work. There wasn't a lot of that in-between stage that happened within that resource. The students really were on their technology a majority of the class period. I would say probably 90% of many of the class periods, they were on their devices. And at times, students seemed unclear about what the learning target was. I don't think that's a reflection of the teachers or the teaching. I think that's a reflection of the prompt is just not totally clear. So therefore, we weren't clear ourselves. My perspectives, when we were in there, you saw much more of a blend of teacher instruction, peer-to-peer interaction, and independent work opportunities. So there was just a little bit more of a blend of that throughout the whole class period. Students were in their workbooks and they were actively reading and annotating in their workbooks, which was really great to see. And the students did appear confident in the routine of the learning structure. So they really kind of seemed to know like this is what comes next and this is what goes here. And they didn't really seem to be fumbling around looking for the next step. They really seemed very sure of themselves and what they were moving into next. So thinking about all of that as a whole, right now, I would say our teachers are really not feeling like StudySync would get much of a strong recommendation at all at this point. Just feeling like it's really not the greatest fit and really not what we maybe thought it was going to be for our students. And so leaning much more heavily right now at the high school level to my perspectives. We are taking some time to do some digging into that for some of the research pieces, some pieces that would have an impact to any of our honors courses, looking at some things that would impact collaboration with our special educators at the high school level as well, since it's a little bit of a different model than North's special education model. So just looking at all of those different pieces and kind of trying to gather more clarity around what that would look like within my perspectives is something that we're currently working on, while all of that feedback and data for the surveys is coming in this week. Lindsay is piloting at the high school level. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I think everything that Heidi said I would definitely echo. I'm piloting StudySync, so I will say I was really excited to get the chance to observe Wendy's classroom actually with my perspectives, and then 2 of our high school teachers getting to just be in the room while that's happening, and kind of part of the time in the high school classroom I almost took on the role of the student and grabbed an extra workbook and like, would I be able to follow along with this? What would I do differently if I was in the front of the room and walking around and helping the kids instead of acting like I was one of them? I just kind of felt like the experience in that room was really different than the experience that I knew I was giving my kids in my room. And that was super refreshing to me, because I'll be honest, I started to get a little discouraged after a little while of using this resource, the StudySync resource in my classroom, because I had been excited about the opportunity to, as Heidi mentioned, choose like certain modules that various kids would need, because every kid's different. One's gonna need a lot of help in one area, the other one, if they hear it again, they're just gonna go bananas because they know it backwards and forwards already. And what I kind of found instead was that the kids that were struggling, struggled more with the resources that I was giving them that were supposed to help them struggle less. And I think some of that comes from clarity, and I did spend a lot of time just trying to figure out gosh, am I using the resource wrong? This sounded like it was gonna be so helpful. What am I doing? And I had the opportunity to ask some questions to the vendor at various points through this process, and I really felt like I had a good understanding of what the resource is supposed to be able to do and look like in a classroom. And when I tried it out in my room, it just didn't feel like it was what my kids responded to or needed. So from that perspective, again, just my experience the past, month or so here, I feel like I've had a chance to really try it a lot of different ways and use a lot of different features of the resource, and getting to see my perspectives was just really good to kind of be okay, there are resources out there that kind of do things differently,
and then I went back and taught, of course, mine with the perspective of like, what did I like from that room and like, could I make it happen in mine? So, just a little insight into how it's been going in my room. Questions that you guys have for me?
I don't have any questions, but yeah, I appreciate that perspective on it, and interesting that you're coming up with the same feedback, so
Yeah.
that's also a good thing to have, right? When you come back to the table and you're like, I agree,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
okay, very good.
I got
firsthand feedback from my daughter.
Oh, okay. In a
She was
study
very
setting?
emboldened to tell me.
Okay.
She did the study's sake.
Yes.
And it was actually aligned with what the concerns were
Yeah.
in that, where, you know, she's just like, you know, she chose different words, but.
Yes. Yeah. You know, like, it is interesting to hear the student feedback in the classroom too, and to just kind of go like, okay, yeah, I see where you're struggling with that, you know, and we are, at everything that we do, like, the level of professionalism in the classroom is like, they don't know what we think about this resource, this is what we're teaching, you know? But being able to hear their feedback, and as you guys have been able to see with the feedback that Heidi and Lynn both shared from parents and teachers and students, without talking to each other explicitly about it, we've sort of, again, all come to very similar conclusions. So the other thing I think that highlights is that we all have the same goals, right? Which is like to get students engaged. It's ironic that they think, I shouldn't say this, I was gonna say it's ironic they think they're reading more in this than they were before, because nobody piloting anything, I don't think, read a whole novel in any of those situations, and previously we had. Some of the resources, again, like have that option, but I guess just kind of noticing that our goal, regardless of quantity or any of those little details, is just to get kids engaged, reading, talking to each other, achieving the standards that we work towards, like making sure they can do. And I just feel like I've been really proud of like our like team and our kids and all the feedback we've been getting to like just see that that's what everybody's thinking. So you never know, right? When you're going through something that's new and different, what that's gonna look like, but yeah, that's what I've been seeing.
Well, thank you for that feedback.
Great feedback, thank you.
So kind of our overall next steps are very similar to social studies. We're in the process of getting our student and family feedback and the final staff feedback. Those things will all be basically wrapping up at the end of this week, beginning of next week, so that we'll have time to analyze that data, reflect and review as a whole with our pilot teams at both buildings, and have those debrief conversations. And then we would be coming back to you on April 17th as well with kind of a share out of those final recommendations and what that data showed us. So any other questions about anything as a whole?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for all the extra work
Great.
and for feedback, I appreciate it.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Great
Thanks for
evening.
your hard work.
Yes.
Okay, moving on,
Yes.
elementary, ELA, pilots.
Yes, so Michelle Struck and Nina Overholzer and Angie Sardina are here to kind of help us talk through where we are with our elementary ELA review. If you remember, we took a little more time on the front end to do some learning with our teachers because we are making some significant shifts with that science-aligned instruction. So before they went into the pilot, we really wanted to provide that instruction. So a lot has been happening in a short amount of time with ELA, and our pilots are well underway. So I'll let Michelle start us off, and then we'll hear from everybody as we go through.
Yeah, so I think our outcomes are the same. We wanna bring you an update on where we're at the elementary level. And then we developed some structures in regards to how our coaches are supporting our teachers, so we got all hands on deck.
You know, I think that's an important reminder, just as we're going through this, our elementary teachers teach multiple subjects in a day. Most of our secondary teachers have a couple of preps, but they're teaching the same content area during the day. So these teachers are managing something new, plus teaching math, social studies, and science, and all of the things, so.
And then we put different means of gathering various feedback, so I wanna share with you how we're getting feedback from our various parts of this pilot. And then what our noticings and understandings of the pilot resources are at this point in time. So we just, well, it is Thursday, so it's week 4 of our pilot. And then what our next steps are, which are pretty similar. So I wanna bring us back to the science aligned instruction in the 9 areas. So if you think about Act 20 again, that was part of Act 20 that we need to be looking at curriculum that provides those 9 areas. And then there's systematic and explicit instruction in those areas. So when we chose the 2 curriculums that we're piloting, those were the 9 areas that were in there. So benchmark advance, if you remember, that's the one that we're piloting, and then the other one is My View Literacy, which is SAVIS, which is the same company that you heard at North and the high school with It's My Perspectives. Okay, so that's kind of the same publisher.
There seems to be a theme going. Which is interesting, you just never know.
So far, since the last time we were here, I was trying to think, oh my gosh, what did I share with you last time? We had the 2 benchmark representatives and iView come and train us, so our teachers that are piloting went through that training. And then we took some time where they had half a day to work together to plan and get themselves ready to teach, because we have to remember at the elementary level, it's writing, it's foundational skills, and it's reading, so it's a big lift for our teachers. And then we began the pilot on February 19th, did you see like the fireworks go off in the sky?
It was a big day.
It was a big day. And then on February 28th, we gathered all the pilot teachers together and we met for about an hour to talk about how things were going. I gave them a little understanding and learning around writing instruction, because there are some shifts in writing. So I always like to give them little nuggets, I call it, of learning. So I'm trying to plant the seed with them so they understand why the resources are structured and the kids are engaging in the learning that they are. There's lots to learn yet in a lot of different areas. And then we gave them time to work in their grade level teams and do like a comparative analysis, a short discussion around what their noticings are in each of the pilots so that they could kind of compare and contrast very informally. And we have started lesson observations, so our coaches and Amy and myself and principals are popping into classrooms. And we developed a coaching like structure to rally around the teachers and support them. So this is basically how we're supporting them, because it is a lot of work for them to take this on. So we have weekly meetings. So if I can explain how we did this, is we have like for 2nd grade, we have in both buildings, Shady Lane and at Ben Franklin, one teacher is doing like My View, and then another teacher in Shady Lane is doing benchmark, and then another one at BF is doing My View. So we're actually having like virtual meetings, so we don't have 2 teachers in the same building doing the same resource. We split it up so that there could be does that make sense? So in 2nd grade, one teacher's doing benchmark and one's doing My View. That would have been a more efficient way to explain it. But then we had them partner up with a teacher in a different building, and then we have weekly meetings, and then we assigned a coach. So then every week, a coach is assigned to a specific grade level, and then we meet and we do like a plus delta, what are things that are going well, what are some noticings or some barriers, and then they help plan for like upcoming things. So if they're struggling maybe with I'm not understanding writing or how we're approaching, then that coach goes back, rolls up his or her sleeves, it should be her because they're all ladies, and then they help support them. That has been really powerful to have that collaboration across the buildings.
Okay.
And then
And I would say the other thing that does is, one, we are building that structure across the schools and building those collaborative opportunities, but also whichever resource we decide to go with, there's some expertise in both buildings. So moving forward, it just makes sense to have for us.
And then the coaching, like the coaches are basically just helping, they're looking ahead each week to kind of know what lessons are coming up and maybe what they see might be some things for them to understand. They are helping them with planning, if something comes up like I spoke to, the coach will go back and do a deeper dive. And then we have the coaches going into classrooms, either co-teaching or actually doing a lesson, so that it gets them that understanding of the resource also. And then feedback, these are various ways that we're getting feedback throughout our pilot up to this time. Each week we are asking the teachers to reflect, and we have criteria set up in regards to what they're reflecting on. So you could look at this like anecdotal notes. They're taking like each week thinking about those areas that are on that feedback, and their noticings around what's happening in the curriculum. And we just then, well, that's one thing, so they're doing that on a weekly basis. They can go to the next thing, I think this will lead me to it. Then they're taking that feedback, and those criterias are the same criterias that we use for the resource evaluation rating. So they just completed that on Friday. And then, so it takes like 3 weeks of their noticing. So they're going back to their notes that they took each week, and then they filled out that evaluation rating survey. I will say that it was absolutely amazing, the amount of feedback that we got from the teachers. They took so much time and effort and thought into this survey. It was pretty extensive. There were a lot of criterias in different areas. And then at the end of each area, like unit navigation, we had an area where they could respond and give us a narrative. They didn't just give one sentence responses. They went back and they explained why they gave a certain rating for those specific subcategories under that area. It was such valuable feedback at that midpoint. So they need to be commended for their dedication and their time and thought that they are putting towards this pilot and how committed they are to it. So it gave us good information. We're still vetting it and sifting
It was a
through
lot.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
it was a lot to go through and read those comments.
Yes.
It was super helpful though. It was very clear. I was really kind of shocked when I opened that document, how much there was there.
Good.
It
That
was
is really good,
a lot.
especially trying to figure out, okay, so how do we get these 9 concepts out of certain curriculums, because in the end, they have to be the ones that are hitting those in their
For
classrooms
sure.
every day. And so they're gonna want a resource that's gonna work well for them.
And I think
So,
Michelle laid
good
that
to
out,
hear.
that expectation, or not an expectation, that sounds really top down, but just when you put, the more you can put in there, that helps us then, so that if things are really even between the two, or we're seeing something, we can dig in deeper. If you just put, I like it, that doesn't help us with next steps, because if there's something that we're not seeing that we should, we can dig in and offer assistance in the next week or two.
Right.
But if we just have, it was good, kind of like it, that's not gonna help us.
There
So-
was nothing like that.
No, my gosh, I was
There
blown away just scrolling and scrolling. I'm like, this is gonna take us forever to somehow, but it's gonna be good.
Yeah.
But that's actually really good to hear, so that actually reinforces, why I'm glad we paused the social studies for them, right? I wanted them to focus in on the one and making it, stellar and giving them that opportunity, because those young, those are, formative years for the kids. They're like the building blocks of middle school, high school, and so we need to make sure that they're secure and good in that curriculum that we introduce them, so
I
glad to hear that.
really like the coaching approach too, where you're really involved with the coaching to give each pilot the best success it could have, just to, make it fly, and then the final results we'll find out, but,
And those periods of time have been my favorite.
Yeah,
Just sitting and the other day I said, I'll be back in a minute, we were meeting about this stuff, and I gotta just meet with my 3rd grade team. And it was 45 minutes later, I'm like, you guys, I gotta go. But we were just having such a robust discussion, and each week, we started off the first week, they were just treading water, right, and giving them the grace to just kind of figure things out. And then week 2, we were really having and now week 3 and 4, they're driving the discussion and saying, how did you figure that out? Just really, it's really been fun to be a part of that.
Well, and I would say our coaches have gone above and beyond. Nina, for example, you're coaching with a grade level you haven't worked with before. So Nina typically works.
I mean, in my life.
So she works with normally works at BF and Shady Lane, and so she's coaching 2 third grade teachers, so.
Yep.
She's, people
That's been
gotten to
great. That's
work in
really been
different ways.
Yeah. And the various modes of feedback have really forced people to evaluate based on the criteria, not
Right.
feelings,
Mhm.
not,
Keep it objective.
right, very objective and very to the criteria, and there's a lot of criteria. And there's a lot of new learning, and there's a lot of requirements in the law, and so it keeps forcing us to go back to that. And then that anecdotal weekly sheet really forces you to find, just like we're having students find evidence in the text. We too are finding the evidence in the resource of how this is or is not meeting criteria. And I think we're then taking all that and going, okay, if we go this route, what might we need to be really strategic about, or what might we need to plan some deeper professional learning about? So this is not just for the sake of the pilot, but also then what's the
Laying down the groundwork
implementation
for.
plan down the road?
And when they know that they're gonna be supported in that way, again, the more feedback they give, the more that they'll be supported in the areas that need the supplements.
It's been really great.
And then, I think, classroom observations. Yeah, so our classroom observations, we have a different tool that we're using that's just looking at more of how is the instruction going, and then how are students engaged and how are they navigating the materials that are provided with each curriculum. So we've been going, and we're keeping them real informal, for teachers, someone coming in the room and watching, it's nerve-wracking.
Especially when you're trying something new.
Right, and then I was gonna
Not
say,
about
then in addition that they're navigating something that's so new, and we're here about the resource, we wanna know modes of instruction, how is gradual release of responsibility, we're more honing in on those instructional components, we're we get it, you're kind of figuring this out and it's all new. So we've been capturing information about that, and it's just good to see it live in action, right? You can open up the TE manual and you can see, wow, this looks really good. And then to execute it and then see kids navigate and stuff, it's just good, it's good. So overall, at this point in time, this is just some noticings that we have about the current curriculum. Very systematic instruction, we can see that it's building on simple and moving to complex. And there is this explicit instruction in those 9 areas. I was in one room today and within 45 minutes, we're moving. It's hitting those areas and there's instruction in that. So it's busy, but it's a good busy, it's rigorous. Very much clear learning objectives being stated, and we can see how they spiral and move through, and there's review with that. There is the connections between, that's why we wanted to go with a comprehensive program, is because we can see then the connections between the foundational skills, the reading and the writing, and how that loops all together, and those kids are seeing how that works, not that we're just kind of siloing it here and now it's forgotten about. Think shift in lesson structure. So if we think of typically in the past, when you look at a workshop approach structure, you have that 10 to 15 minute mini lesson, and then you have kids going out and applying what they learned and teachers meeting with small groups. There is more of a shift in that kind of structure, and it's not that the same every day like that. We have whole group going on, our whole group instruction might be a little longer on certain days and maybe not so much longer. So it's all that, right, the navigating that and that different kind of framework. I believe that right now, due to them trying to understand and the pacing of what they have before them, it is impacting that time of them being able to get small group instruction in, but they're starting now. But I think that's just, you have to give them the gift of time, right? So their lessons are running longer, and then that impacts that, but I think I don't think that will be an issue once we get into a curriculum and they get the feel for it, they get the, and the flow, then I think that will be in place, but
And
that's
for the
just something.
kids too,
Yeah.
this is a whole different thing for
Yes.
them, so it's a shift for them in a different routine, and we're jumping in the middle of the year, so
Yes.
I think that will also be quicker for them if you're starting off day one of school
Yeah.
with this expectation and the structure and the routines, as opposed to all of a sudden, we kind of flipped it on one day.
We flipped it, we got the light
Make
switch.
a definite shift, and so stamina has been something
Mhm.
that we've come around, which again, I think is a good thing. It just takes time.
So our next steps, that's basically somewhat similar. We are having a meeting with the teachers again, next Wednesday, so we're pulling them in for like a check-in too. And the focus of that meeting is we are going to have them meet with their grade level teachers together as teams to really do a show and tell or a comparative analysis of the two curriculums. And we're going to come up with criteria for them to discuss with guiding questions, so then they can speak to that, and then they'll have their TE manuals and they'll show evidence. Well, this is how, my view does it, or this is how Benchmark does it, because that is a way that they can get to understand the other resource, because due to us having the 6 weeks, we don't have the opportunity to have them do the other resource to get experience with it. And so when you only know what you know with your resource, we have to open up their lens so that they get exposure to the other one. Now, they are having conversations because they're having, the 2 grade level teachers are each piloting the resource, so they are talking. But this is more like a guided conversation that we're gonna have certain areas that we want them to look at, and then guiding questions, not just like casual conversation.
Apples to apples.
Yeah, so for example, we would pick assessment, and then we're gonna have some guiding questions about assessment, and we want them to talk about their 2 resources and in regards to assessment and the things we ask them to think about with that. And then in April, we'll have them do that second evaluation reading that they just finished. And then we'll be having a meeting on the 10th to bring them together to decide which one we feel would best meet the needs of our students. And then we will be back to visit you on April 17th to tell you what our recommendation is. And the one item I forgot to list is we do have the family survey and the student survey that will be in there also. I forgot to list that up, so that will also be a next step for us.
Oh, yeah, perfect, yeah, I'd love to hear what the students have to say.
Oh, they've had so much to say. It's been like I mean, just,
It's funny.
it's just like great. I mean, I was in a 3rd grade classroom today, and you're just talking to kids and like, what are you really learning? Oh gosh, you're almost at the end of this unit, like which has been your favorite text so far? This table group, they went all the way back to the very first one, so I'm like, oh well, I thought they'd kind of be like, oh, this one read, like that was 3 weeks ago, I don't even remember what we read. And I was like, why that text? And they were able to tell you all about it and articulate it.
Good comprehension.
It was, and then, one girl, she's like, will you still be here at writing time, because I really wanna show you my story, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna stay all the way till 12, she's like, okay, can you come to me first when we get to writing? And, I was in a classroom the other day and they were writing, typically there's a good handful of kids with nothing, I don't know, so you're trying to brainstorm with them, pull it out. I'm going around, this was at a different school, but also a 3rd grade class, and every single kid, not only a text, but then was telling you who their character was, they're writing historical fiction story. Who their characters were, then they were telling me all about how when they got to Ellis Island, but they couldn't get right in. So they were using like this context of the text that they had read, but then to write a fictional story. Their characters, and like Michelle was kind of speaking to that in preparation, like they were learning about her dialogue and how to use those quotation marks. Well, then they turn right to their story and pull out a few areas that you can now apply them, bring that into your story. So like when she speaks about those connections, though that was coming through really strong, that you're gonna have some explicit instruction and modeling and a practice that we're gonna practice together, and now you apply it to your work. And so it just felt really seamless with that, but the way kids are speaking to things and how much they're learning and how much they're enjoying it, I've had hardly any kids say that they haven't liked it, which I was kind of surprised. One girl today told me she loves that workbook because she feels like a high schooler.
It's thick.
That's
So
fine.
the one
Yeah, high school, there's no
I
light
think she
fixture.
was-
That's
pain
Yeah.
carry around.
Yeah, it's a switch
But,
of
is there any,
Yeah.
any one, the benchmark versus my view that's kind of pulling ahead for a sneak
I don't
peek?
think we should even put the cart before the horse.
It's a little too early, I would say.
Like, I don't even wanna.
hesitant.
and
Well,
there's
other
room.
areas have said something was rising,
Yeah, they're a little
so-
farther along,
Sure.
so I
Yeah.
think
Okay.
this is about timing. If we saw you in 3 weeks, 2
Be a
weeks, I
different
think,
story.
I think it would be a
Yeah.
different
Okay.
story, but go ahead.
Yeah, and I think through in the survey, like with our last question was, at this point in time with your knowledge of the curriculum, would you strongly consider it, partially consider, or a low consideration, right? And they were very mindful, like some teachers said, right now I would have to say partially because it's too new. I don't
Sure.
know enough about
Yeah,
it,
you still
and I
need to know it.
right, and I even feel like after 6 weeks, like 6
Right.
weeks is not, we're like kind of scratching the surface. We'll know more after 6 weeks, but it's still like still a short time to like get to know everything, but we're doing behind the scenes digging.
Yeah, sure.
And I would be like I don't want to skew anybody from doing the due diligence of going through an entire unit. Like a unit is 6 weeks and if people, don't want people to feel like we're leaning one way before we've really seen it through and be like, well, why am I have to do that right? I don't know, I wanna be true to that whole process, you know, and not start planting any seeds for people to feel a certain way about what we're asking them to really dig into. And the differences we've seen, even when we did our science pilot last year, what we thought was gonna happen in the end did not, because we just saw things start to grow as you implement something more. So I think that's kind of a lens to consider it.
And it sounds like kind of that's what happened at the high school, like they sounded really great and then as implementation
Which is why
happened.
you pilot.
Yeah,
Right.
because there's might be a big difference between what's in the teacher manual and then the reality of implementing in class.
All of those components have to come together, the student experience, obviously the connection with the state standards and the things we want students to teach.
It's a big project.
The teacher, the teacher resources, all of it has to come together.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much.
Very informative.
There's a
Yeah.
good structure and good process going on here, good
Yes.
implementation,
It feels
I like
good.
it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for all your
Yes.
dedication.
Yeah, very well thought out.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do think it's
And really good.
very well thought out.
Thank you.
We're working,
Yes,
thank you for your time
And I'm really
Yeah.
learning more each day, I just was whispering the answer over there, I'm like, I read the assessment guide today, oh my gosh, I have so much to show you, but it's like, you just can only read so much every day, but then throughout the time you.
And on our end, it's so fun to look at it all too. I mean, it's,
We have the lovely box.
it's,
No,
no, it's worth it. It's worth it to have it.
That's good.
It's worthwhile to
Yeah.
have it in our
Yeah.
hands.
It has, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
everybody.
All right,
Enjoy
have
the
a
rest
good
of your
night.
evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, moving on to our action item, student travel 2024 to 2025.
Yes, so this is something we bring to you annually. These are the requested out-of-state and overnight trips that have occurred before, so none of these are new. But we asked our teams to let us know what trips are you planning for next year that are out of state and or overnight, so that we could get your formal approval again on no changes, just dates, but really everything else is really the same. So we would look for your approval of these. Again, you've approved, these have been approved by committees before, so nothing new. We will, as an aside, I anticipate having at our April 3rd meeting, a request for a brand new trip. So, somebody has an idea for a trip, and so.
Is Abbott a new one too?
No,
new
it is not.
The Abbott has happened before with the previous instructor we had, Sarah Kozart, when she was here.
Oh, okay.
Where they have done, but then with the COVID pandemic, that was paused for a couple of years, just because of the ability to get onto college campuses.
And then now that our whole Rise and Abbott, we're with that shift, so it's
So yeah, the shift is
emphasized
a
now
little bit
too?
different, yes, there's a greater emphasis at the high school now with, not, Rise is no longer a piece, but Abbott is a much larger piece, so.
Very good.
good. Any questions on any of the trips?
No, I think when I was on the committee, we always asked about like the insurance aspect of it, prior to traveling international, et cetera.
Yes, so all of that is taken
Looking
care
at
of in the
Panama, you know, like
same-
the international one, because I remember that was always a topic of discussion.
Yeah.
German.
Go ahead.
Since they're recurring and they're not new teachers leading them, all of those teachers are aware, like for the panel one, that they need to have the insurance requirement in with that package deal, which is why that new field trip will come to you next month.
Okay.
Because, yep, that's a new, like that person leading it needs to have all those pieces together and hasn't done it before, so it gets presented to you separately.
Okay, yeah, I'm very, these are all the same. So,
Yeah.
Any questions? Okay, so I need action to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay.
Second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Good. All right, good.
Oh, thank you, I'm very excited.
Yeah.
It's a good
Cleared that
experience.
hurdle.
It's a good experience for the kids.
It is, it absolutely is, and it's great to be able to bring all of those back and, you know, be in a good place with that, so.
Alrighty.
You guys just have to sit here and just for that part? I figured if I'm staying, I might as well just see it out, you know? I looked at the agenda, I'm like, this can't take super long.
I'm glad you're roughing it.
One more
I'm
item.
committed.
Yes,
All right, so committee calendar.
committee calendar, so it's hard to believe we're down to the bottom of the second page here, so of our calendar for April. So as a reminder, we do have 2 meetings in April. We have one on the 3rd and one on the 17th. I appreciate your flexibility in doing that so that we can get a lot done, because that gives us just that much more time to finish up all the processes. As you can see, there's a lot going on. So at our April 3rd meeting, I anticipate an update on Phoenix time, an update on middle school math, again, circling back from last year when we approved those math changes. I think I mentioned this earlier this year, we had a required education for employment, what we call E for E plan in our academic and career planning plan that we put together, and we have updated those. We'll bring those for your approval, so that will be something that probably hasn't been before the committee in several years. I don't know that an E for E plan ever came forward, so that'll be something new, and we'll talk through that. And then again, that new world language field trip potentially. Yes, and then, you guys see where it is, okay, thank you. The Educator Academy, I think we mentioned there were some potential course changes there. That was originally going to come this month, but in working through all the pieces of those new courses, they would be through UWM, and they do have a required textbook. And so, we can't really, if we don't have choice in the textbook, so we want to be able to approve the textbook and the class at the same time. So we're working on those textbooks, should be here very soon for you to look at. So we pushed that approval for a month until we could get, or a few weeks until we could get the textbook for you to take a look at. Because if we're not comfortable with the textbook, then we shouldn't run the class, I guess is the short answer to that. So yes, that will come too. So that will allow us to get all of those other pieces for April, fingers crossed, done. And then really focus our April 17th meeting on finalizing those pilot pieces and our recommendations to you based on all of the data.
So we'll order a pizza for both those meetings.
Thank you.
That's why I stayed late.
Yeah.
So like I
Might as
said,
well.
if as you're reviewing materials, you are finding things you have questions about,
Yeah.
let us know ahead of time so we
Okay.
can really streamline our time on the 17th.
Okay.
Because I think that could be a potentially a long meeting.
Okay.
So, yeah, don't hesitate to send me an email or a text if
Okay.
there are things
Yeah.
That one starts at 6.
Yes, that is our
It does.
evening meeting. The next one, I'm
Is that on a
for.
On Wednesday.
Yes, and I think it's actually my schedule that's,
And it's our schedule, so.
oh, okay, I won't take all the blame.
Yeah, I can't be here any earlier than 6.
So actually, the 3rd
Yeah, can we do
and the
that?
17th are 6 p.m.
Can we have a meeting
Mm-hmm.
conflict
That's
that
what I
day,
had
that
too.
Thursday instead, on the 18th?
Why is that?
I don't think I have anything. Is there something?
I feel like there was at some point, there's a reason we picked the
I
17th.
feel like it was Sarah.
Yeah, well, I do have a conflict, but I have a conflict with every Thursday that I have to work through.
Yeah.
So I can,
I mean,
Not to influence,
Like,
but I will
including
just say
today, like-
that we've invited all
Oh,
of the
well, in
students
advance, yeah,
for the
so-
17th to
okay,
make
then
sure that
the
they
point
block
is
their
moved.
calendar,
Yeah.
Okay.
so that no one had a
So,
conflict.
therein lies
I
the
was
pizza
gonna say.
ordering.
Yes, I will be happy to order pizza for anyone who would
Yeah.
like pizza. But yes,
Munoz can pick it up at the door. No, I'm kidding. Just kidding.
excellent idea. I will.
Oh, no, that'll be fine.
But yes, so
I'll just get a lot of
we
us.
do need to stick to the 17th.
Okay,
Okay, that's fine.
yep, that sounds good.
So a lot of exciting things coming up. I'm excited to
Okay.
keep doing
There is a
work.
lot.
There's a
So we
lot
have the
of-
date set and we're not gonna schedule any further than April because of the election and all, I mean, after April 17th.
Right.
And yeah, because they're not sworn in, the board members aren't sworn in until like the week after, right?
22nd.
Yeah.
So yes, that was.
Ish.
Yeah,
Yep,
wanted
that's
to make
the
sure we
idea.
finish
Yeah.
that process because you've been in the process all the way along.
Yep, any questions or clarifications needed or anything? Okay. So
Yeah.
do I have a motion? We're ready to adjourn, right?
Yes.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion to adjourn.
And second. Oh, and second. And Nina seconds and all in favor? Aye. Good deal. Okay.
Thank you ladies for staying.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.